Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and a non-Stamptember collaboration video. This one is using items from the Simon Says Stamp Stamptember release from September 1st. These are products that, if and when they sell out, they are restocked. I've done a few videos already this month using some of the new release items. A lot of it is sold out. I think one of the items I used today might be, but again, they will be restocked. This video today is for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. I will have a link to the challenge in my blog post that's linked directly below the video. It is just for fun, this challenge. There's a whole group of people that play along. It's open to everyone, and there's a new one each week. So check it out. And yeah, I did some die cutting, 3D embossing, easy watercolor with some Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively saturated inks, and splatter. Always got to have that splatter. So, like I said, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you place an order after clicking on one of my links, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It's what helps pay the bills, keeps the channel going, all the good things, and I very much appreciate it. And that's it from me for the housekeeping. Let's get into making this card. So the first thing I did was I embossed some watercolor paper, which I wasn't 100% sure this would work. I was pretty sure, but I don't think I've ever run like heavyweight watercolor paper. I've done like distress watercolor paper, which is a thinner weight, but Canson XL watercolor paper, which is what I'm using, is 140 pound weight. So I took my panel, I misted it with water, which I do most of the time when I'm running anything through an embossing folder. It just softens the fibers and you get a better impression. I added a little more water than normal because, again, heavyweight plus it's watercolor paper. It can handle the water. And I'm using the thread plaid 3D embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. And for me and my EMPRESS machine, all I need is one cutting plate. And yeah, ran it through and it embossed great. So I was like, perfection. Set that aside. I die cut a piece of the same watercolor paper using the Elegant Blossom Branch wafer die, which I've already used in a previous video, but in that other video, I just die cut everything from white because the background and everything else was the focus. This time I wanted to color the pieces because it's a really pretty wafer die set. So I'm using Pawsitively saturated inks, and I'll link to the two sets that I used. The newest set of the more sort of neutral colors that just came out. And then I pulled a couple greens from a previous set, which was cabbage and artichoke. And I just smushed all the colors that I wanted to use onto a little plastic palette. Any non-porous surface is going to work. And I had all my die cut pieces stuck to one of my Altenew Ultra grip mats just to hold everything in place. And then I've got a paintbrush. And off camera, there's just a big old jar of water. And then I just paint. And it's super simple. I really love painting die cuts. I've talked about this many times in other videos. I don't know what it is. I think just having the parameters of it's like the die cut piece. You don't have to worry about stamp lines. I don't know. I really enjoy whether it's watercoloring them. That is one of my favorite ways, but also like ink smushing them or ink blending. It's just fun. It's fun playing with die cuts. So I used, greens for the leaves, and it was like a mixture of like nutmeg and I think probably allspice for the stem. And then for the actual petals, I mixed, I think 3 different shades of ink altogether, or a couple. I used, I think, Punch and Cabernet, because Punch is kind of ends up being off screen a little bit, but to get the sort of like the deep red color I wanted for this color challenge. And yeah, just painted them. Really, really simple. I would add water first, like just clean water with my brush, and then so that when I added the color, like the inks, things just move on their own. And then for the little flower center, I pretty much kind of use the same like sort of brown shades. And then let everything dry, and then just assembled. And this one is super easy to assemble. You can just kind of look at the packaging. there's just the larger bloom that has the center, which is just the 2 pieces and then the center, and then the smaller one, you can kind of adhere it however you want. Like the 2 pieces overlap on each other, and then this third little piece is just kind of the bloom, like the edges of the petal sticking up, and that's it. And then you just stick it to the stem or to the branch, and we're good. So after I got them adhered, I just used my reverse tweezers to hold everything in place to let the glue dry. And then for my background that I had embossed, I trimmed this down to about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Just took a decent amount off of the edges, and then I stuck that to the grip mat as well. And I'm going to use some of the same inks just to add some color to the back of this. So I'm using cabbage and artichoke, and then I'll use a little bit of nutmeg. And I just grabbed a larger watercolor brush. All the brushes I was using are just the Altenew. It's from the Altenew pack that I had bought however many months ago. Again, really loving these brushes. So I added the cabbage and then the artichoke. I splattered on here as well, just to give it, the texture that I love. I let all of this dry, and then I used the nutmeg with my brush and just added splatter with that. And then same thing, let that dry. And then I'm going to adhere my little floral branch to this. I used a bit of craft tacky glue and then just a couple of thin foam squares on some of the flower parts, just so that those are kind of evened out with all the layers of die cuts. And then once that was adhered, I'm going to stick this in my splat box and add even more splatter, because that's what I love to do. So I'm using some white gouache. It's just my Altenew white gouache, the monster tube that I keep saying is probably going to last me a few lifetimes, but at the rate I splatter, there's a good chance I might use this up. So I watered this down a bit more than I normally do. Just the more you water down, specifically like white gouache, the more transparent it'll be, or the more it will absorb depending on what you're splattering it over. So if it's just like straight up, regular cardstock, it just is what it is. But because all of these inks are water reactive, the splatter made from the gouache and water will absorb some of that as it dries. So it ends up being more subtle, and it's not like stark white. So I'd added that splatter, and then of course I'm going to add a bit of gold splatter while I'm at it. So this is my Gansai Tambi Starry colors. This time I went with the blue gold, which is a little bit more, just a smidge more subtle. And stuck a bit of water in there, and then mixed this up really well with my fan brush. And then added a nice healthy dose of that splatter to this background and the floral stem as well. And then when I was done adding all the splatter, I set that aside to dry, and I die cut my sentiment, which is the CZ Design Simple Thanks wafer die. This also has an outline die with it. I didn't use the outline, I used just the word, and I die cut it from white cardstock. And then the top layer I had die cut from Simon's matte gold cardstock, and then I just adhere those together. And then I'm going to adhere this directly to that panel now that all the splatter is dry. So just trace the back of this with my craft tacky glue, and then I'm going to stick this down, let that glue dry, and then I pulled out one of my big rolls of like this is like natural like twine basically, and I'm going to double this up, wrap this around the panel, and tie this in a bow right below the sentiment. So get it wrapped around. Reverse tweezers come in handy yet again to hold that knot in place so I can make my little bow. This took a little extra fiddling since it's doubled up, so I've got two strings in a sense that I'm fighting with to get the bow the way I want it. So fiddle with it some more, get it the way I want, remove the tweezers, pull everything tight, and then I can trim the tails off with my scissors. And then also decided to trim like one of each of the tails just slightly, so they're purposely uneven. And then I grabbed a piece of Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I also embossed it with that thread plaid 3D embossing folder. And that panel, the Desert Storm one, is A2 sized. And then I'm going to pop the card front onto that with Big Mama foam tape, so it'll give it a little bit of dimension. And then my card base is a top folding A2 white note card. And I pulled out an oldie but goodie favorite of mine, the CZ Design Spring in My Step stamp set that I have used many, many, many times. Love it. And one of my favorite stamps from it, which the Paper Hug stamp. And I'd stuck the card base into my MISTI, and then I stamped the Paper Hug sentiment with the cabbage ink, and then I stamped the little companion or sub sentiment. That I'm going to ink up with the nutmeg ink, and that'll finish off the inside of my card. And then I'd adhered the card front to the card base. And then as my final little embellishment, I've got some gold confetti from Simon Says Stamp, and just sprinkled just a few of them onto the card front. And then I'm going to adhere these into place with dabs of craft tacky glue, just picking them up with my little embellishment wand. I'm going to tuck this other large one kind of underneath the leaf here. I don't know what it is with that. I like tucking confetti underneath things on my cards. So it's just peeking out. I don't know. I like it. So adhere those into place, and that finished off this card. So like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have all the links to all the things in the description box below the video, and then I'll have the link to my blog post, which will have the link to the Color Throwdown Challenge if you want to check it out and play along. All of that will be directly below for anyone who is interested. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me today, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton, and I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in supporting me over on Patreon, the link to that is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye.